There is something about you that has never quite fit. Not in the way a puzzle piece fails to fit, but in the way a key does not fit a lock it was not made for. You were not built for the rooms you have been standing in. You were not designed for the ceiling that has been pressing down on you. And somewhere, in the quietest part of yourself, you have always known this. Not arrogantly, not with pride, but with a kind of aching recognition that has followed you through every season, every disappointment, every moment you smiled through something that was breaking you on the inside. You are not here by accident. That is not a phrase meant to comfort you. It is a fact so specific, so precise, that if you understood the full weight of it right now, you would have to sit down. Heaven did not stumble across you. The algorithm did not simply recommend this message to a random scroll. Something older than technology, something older than any system built by human hands, arranged for your eyes to land here in this exact moment, in this exact season of your life. Chosen one, that is who you are, and I do not say that lightly. There are people in this world who are selected for something, not because they are better than others, not because they have done more, achieved more, or suffered less, but because something in the architecture of eternity designated them for a specific assignment that no one else can carry. And if you are honest with yourself, if you strip away the exhaustion and the doubt and the years of wondering if you were simply deluding yourself, you will find a thread that has run through every chapter of your life, pulling you forward even when you were trying to walk away from it. You are one of those people, and this message was assembled for you. Here is how you know. There are signs that only the chosen ones carry, and they do not look like what you might expect. They do not look like glory. They look like disruption. They look like quiet ache. They look like a life that doesn't quite line up with everyone around you, no matter how hard you try to make it fit. The first sign is that your dreams have been sharper lately. Not just night dreams, though those too have been pressing on you with an urgency you cannot fully explain, but the kind of waking dreams that show up in the middle of an ordinary afternoon, when you are doing something completely mundane and something inside you rises up and says, "This is not it. This is not the whole story. There is more." That sharpening is not restlessness, it is preparation. The second sign is that you feel a friction with environments that used to feel comfortable. Rooms that once felt like home have started to feel like borrowed clothes. Conversations you used to enjoy have started to feel hollow, not because the people in them are bad, but because you are outgrowing the frequency. Chosen ones go through seasons of holy discomfort because they are being separated for something that requires a different kind of company. The third sign is a frustration that you cannot fully explain to anyone around you. It is not anger. It is not bitterness. It is a deep cellular knowing that you are capable of more than what you are currently expressing, and something keeps pressing against that knowing. That frustration is not a character flaw. It is a compass. It is pointing you in the direction of your real life. The fourth sign is that you keep encountering the same message from different directions. A conversation, a song, a line in a book. A stranger says something that lands with a precision that should not be possible. That is not coincidence. Chosen ones are tracked. They are followed by confirmation, because heaven does not leave its assignments unacknowledged. When the same truth finds you from 5 different angles, that is not repetition. That is a pursuit. The fifth sign is the strangest one. You feel both deeply seen and deeply invisible at the same time. Seen by something you cannot name, invisible to the world around you that does not yet understand what it is looking at. That dual experience is one of the most isolating feelings a human being can carry. And I want you to know that it is not a malfunction. It is the exact signature of someone who has not yet stepped into the fullness of what they carry, because what they carry has not yet been revealed to the world. You are not who you were, and you are not yet fully who you are becoming. But right now, in this in-between place, something extraordinary is taking shape. You are not being held back, you are being held. There is a difference, and that difference will change everything about how you see this season you are in. You were not almost chosen. You were not runner-up. There was no deliberation. The selection happened before you had language to describe it, before you had a name, before you arrived in this body, in this generation for this moment in history. And the fact that you are here, listening to this right now, is not a small thing. It is the latest confirmation in a long line of confirmations you have been receiving your entire life. God is not confused about you, even when you are confused about yourself. Even when the path ahead looks like fog, even when the last thing you tried did not work the way you planned, even when the people you trusted let you down, even when you let yourself down. The selection was not conditional on your performance. It was made before your performance began. And here is what I need you to sit with for just a moment, because this might be the most important thing you hear today. The one who created you is not simply watching your life unfold with patience. According to something older and deeper than any theology I can explain to you in a single message, what you are becoming in this season is something that even the divine watches with something like wonder. You were made with a specificity so precise, with a combination of gift and wound and fire, and tenderness so unique, that even God is amazed at who you are turning into. You were not almost ready. You were ready the moment you showed up here. There is something you have been carrying that no one has named for you yet. And I want to try to name it right now. Not because I have all the answers, but because I have heard it described in enough voices, from enough people walking through enough different kinds of silence to recognize it when I see it. And I see it in you. It comes in waves. That is the first thing. You will be fine for a stretch of days, maybe even weeks, moving through your routine, keeping up with what needs to be kept up with, and then something small will happen. A smell, a song, a date on the calendar that you almost forgot but your body remembered. And the wave hits. Not dramatically. Not in a way that anyone around you would even notice. It just washes through you. This grief that does not have a clean object. This mourning for something you cannot fully name. You are not broken. That wave is not weakness. That wave is the sound of a soul that has loved deeply and waited long and felt the distance between where it is and where it knows it is supposed to be. The second thing I want to name for you is the heaviness of familiar places. There are people in your life, maybe people you have known for years, people you genuinely care about, and yet lately when you are with them, there is a weight that was not there before. Not because they have done something wrong, not because you have become cold or distant or ungrateful, but because something in you has shifted, and the old conversations no longer reach the part of you that is now awake. You sit in rooms that used to feel like home, and you feel like a visitor. You smile through dinners and wonder if anyone at the table would understand what is actually happening inside you. That feeling is not ingratitude. That feeling is not pride. That feeling is the sign of a soul that has been called to a different frequency, and the old stations no longer come in clearly. The third thing is the door. If you have been dreaming about a door lately, whether literally in your sleep or figuratively in your waking imagination, I need you to pay attention to that. There is a door that keeps appearing in the subconscious of chosen ones during seasons of transition. It is not always the same door. Sometimes it is a door in a house you have never lived in. Sometimes it is a door at the end of a hallway that stretches longer than hallways should stretch. Sometimes it is simply the feeling of standing in front of something large and closed and knowing that what is on the other side matters enormously, but your hand has not yet reached for the handle. That recurring image is not random. Your spirit is rehearsing something. It is practicing the moment of crossing over, because crossing over is coming. The fourth thing is the message that finds you from multiple directions at once. Maybe it was a word a stranger said to you last week that landed with a precision that made you go still. Maybe it was a line in a podcast you were only half listening to, and suddenly you were fully listening. Maybe it is this message, right now, arriving the same week, that 3 other things pointed you in the same direction. When the same truth reaches you from 5 different sources in a short span of time, that is not coincidence, that is confirmation. Heaven is not subtle when it is trying to get through to someone it has chosen for something specific. And underneath all of this, underneath the waves of grief and the heavy rooms and the recurring door and the converging messages, there is the loneliness. I do not want to skip past it. I do not want to reframe it before I have honored it. The loneliness of being awake in a room full of sleeping people. The loneliness of carrying a knowing that you cannot fully explain, because every time you try to explain it, it comes out sounding either arrogant or unstable. The loneliness of lying awake at 3 in the morning, not in crisis exactly, but in a kind of suspended waiting that feels heavier in the dark. The loneliness of feeling like you are the only person who sees what you see, feels what you feel, knows what you know about yourself and your life and what you are capable of. You are not the only one, but more than that, you were never meant to carry this alone. I also want to say something about the feeling of being wrong. Not wrong about a decision, wrong as a person. That quiet, persistent suspicion that something is fundamentally off about you, that everyone else seems to navigate life with a fluency you who have never quite mastered, that maybe the gap between who you are and who you feel you should be is not a season, but a permanent condition. I want to look directly at that feeling right now and tell you that it is not an accurate report on your reality. It is a symptom. It is what happens when a person carrying an extraordinary assignment has been waiting long enough that the waiting itself starts to feel like evidence of unworthiness. Being overlooked and being positioned are not the same thing, and the difference between them is everything. When you are overlooked, something has failed. You were supposed to be seen, and you were not. That is a loss. Being positioned looks identical from the outside. You are still not in the room. You are still not being recognized. The doors are still not opening. But the difference is what is happening behind the scenes. When you are positioned, the delay is not negligence. It is architecture. Every month that passes without the breakthrough is a month in which something necessary is being built that you cannot see yet. You are not being passed over. You are being placed. And placement requires precision. Precision requires time. Think of it this way. A surgeon does not rush the most delicate part of the procedure simply because the patient is ready to be done with it. The preparation is not the punishment. The preparation is the protection. And what you have been assigned to carry is too significant, too specific, too important to be released before the vessel is fully formed. You have been mistaking positioning for rejection for a long time now, and I understand why. From the outside, they look the same. Both involve silence. Both involve waiting. Both involve watching others move forward while you seem to stand still, but rejection leaves you behind. Positioning catches you up to exactly where you need to be, at exactly the right moment, with exactly what you need in hand. So I want to ask you to do something right now, right in this moment, even before anything changes in your external circumstances. I want to ask you to consider the possibility that you have not been overlooked, that every season you have endured has been a season of positioning, that the people who moved past you were not moving into your lane, that the doors that did not open were not your doors, and that what is being arranged for you right now in the invisible spaces you cannot access yet is more aligned with who you actually are than anything you would have stepped into if the door had opened earlier. You are not behind. You have never been behind. You have been on a timeline that looks different from the outside and only from the inside, only from where you are standing right now, will it eventually make the kind of sense that takes your breath away. If you recognize yourself in what I have just described, if something in this landed with a specificity that felt personal, I want you to gav out binglunt to I see it right now. Not for me, but as an act of acknowledgement to yourself. To say out loud, even in typed words, even in a comment section, that you see what is happening in your life and you are choosing right now to name it as positioning instead of punishment. And while you are there, if this message has already begun to shift something in you, consider sharing it with someone who is carrying what you have been carrying. Like this video, stay connected so the next part of what needs to reach you can reach you. And if you feel moved to support this work so that more of these messages can be made, there is a way to do that in the description. Nothing is required. Everything is welcome. You are not alone in this room, and this room was built for you. You have been carrying something heavy for a long time now, and I do not want to simply name that weight and then move past it without giving you something real to hold on to today. Not a concept, not a feeling, something you can actually do, something with steps, something that takes less time than you think and costs nothing but your willingness to show up for yourself in a way that perhaps you have not been doing lately. I want to introduce you to something I call the return protocol, not because it is complicated, but because the word return is the most honest word I know for what this practice actually does. It does not take you somewhere new. It returns you to something you already carry. It clears the noise long enough for you to hear what has been trying to reach you underneath all of the busyness and the worry and the weight of waiting. This is not a program designed for people who have everything together. This is a practice designed for people who are tired of waiting, for permission to access what they were already born carrying. This protocol has 3 steps, and you can do all 3 of them right now, in whatever space you are in. You do not need silence, though silence helps. You do not need a special posture or a candle or a particular time of day. You need only your willingness and about 7 minutes, which I will come back to in detail because the specificity of that number matters more than you might expect. The first step is what I call the grateful reversal. It sounds simple, and it is, but do not mistake simple for shallow. I want you to think of one thing that did not happen to you, not something you received, something you were spared. Maybe it is a relationship that ended before it took more from you than it already did. Maybe it is a job you did not get that would have placed you in a building that was not your building, surrounded by people who could not see you, doing work that would have slowly dimmed the very thing in you that is meant to shine. Maybe it is a version of your life that you were desperately chasing 3 years ago, a version that, if you are honest now, would have made you smaller, not larger. Whatever it is, I want you to find it. I want you to hold it for a moment and let the gratitude for its absence settle into your body. Because what you were saved from is just as sacred as what you were saved for. The no that felt like rejection was sometimes the most precise protection you ever received. And it came from something that saw further down the road than you could see from where you were standing. This step is not about toxic positivity. It is not about pretending that the loss did not hurt. The loss hurt. The door closing hurt. The silence hurt. But inside that hurt, if you look carefully, if you trace the thread forward to where you are right now, you will find evidence that something was looking out for you, even in the moments that felt most like abandonment. The grateful reversal is the practice of finding that evidence and letting it recalibrate your trust. When you locate that specific moment, that specific door that closed and later revealed itself as mercy, something happens in your nervous system that is not simply emotional, it is neurological. Your brain begins scanning for evidence of protection rather than evidence of abandonment. And once that scan begins, what it finds will change the entire lens through which you interpret your current season. The second step follows directly from the first. Once you have found the thing you are grateful was withheld, I want you to make a declaration. Out loud if you can, but even whispered counts, and even spoken silently in the movement of your lips counts. The declaration is this. Say these words in whatever language feels most like yours, in whatever phrasing feels most true to your voice. I am not behind. I am exactly where I need to be for what is coming. The time I am in right now is not wasted time. It is appointed time. You do not have to believe it fully yet. You only have to say it. Because there is something that happens in the human nervous system when the mouth speaks what the spirit knows before the mind has caught up. The declaration is not denial. The declaration is alignment. You are not pretending the waiting has not been hard. You are choosing to name the waiting as something other than punishment. You are choosing, in this single spoken moment, to reframe the entire season you are in, not by dismissing its difficulty, but by elevating its purpose. Words spoken with intention do something to the body. They are not simply sounds, they are instructions. And when you declare appointed time over your life, you are giving your nervous system a new instruction. You are telling it to stop operating from the posture of someone who has been forgotten and to begin operating from the posture of someone who is being prepared. That shift, subtle as it sounds, changes everything about how you move through the next 24 hours. It changes what you notice. It changes what you reach for. It changes who you are when you walk into a room. Now I want to speak directly about the third step, because this is the one that everything else depends on, and I want to give it the full weight it deserves rather than rushing past it. 7 minutes of practice silence. Not meditation in the traditional sense, though there is nothing wrong with meditation. Not a discipline that requires years of training or a particular belief system or any skill you do not already possess. Simply 7 minutes in which you do nothing. You do not check your phone. You do not narrate your thoughts. You do not try to feel something or produce something or arrive somewhere. You simply allow your brain, your magnificent, overstimulated, deeply capable brain, to settle, to stop performing, to drop below the noise of clock time, deadline time, the time that measures your worth by your output, and touch something quieter, something older, something that has been waiting patiently underneath all the noise for you to remember it is there. Here is what I want you to understand about why 7 minutes specifically. This is not an arbitrary number drawn from symbolism or spiritual tradition, though 7 does carry weight in both. This is a number drawn from neuroscience, from research into what actually happens inside the human brain when it is given sustained intentional stillness. Within the first 4 to 7 minutes of chosen silence, the brain begins to shift away from beta state, the state of alert wakefulness and constant task-oriented processing that most of us operate in for the majority of our waking hours, and begins to descend into theta. Theta waves, operating between 4 and 8 hertz, are associated with deep creative access, with intuitive knowing, with the kind of learning that bypasses the critical, skeptical filter of the conscious mind and goes directly into the deeper layers of understanding. Theta is the frequency of the dreamer. It is the frequency that children operate in naturally before the world trains it out of them. And it is the frequency that chosen ones are wired to access, not occasionally, not only in moments of crisis or inspiration, but as a regular, sustainable baseline. Most adults have lost reliable access to theta, not because their brains have changed, but because their lives have not given them enough stillness to get there. We do not lose the frequency. We lose the conditions that allow us to find it. And 7 minutes of intentional daily silence begins to restore those conditions. Not immediately, not dramatically, but consistently. Over days and weeks of practice, what was once a rare and unpredictable state of clarity begins to become more available. The ideas that used to arrive only in the shower begin arriving more often. The answers that used to come only after weeks of struggle begin surfacing more quickly. The sense of knowing what to do next, which has felt so distant for so long, begins returning. Not because you have become smarter, but because you have restored access to the part of yourself that was already carrying the answer. I also want to say something that I think is important, and that does not get said often enough. You have been living at a very high speed for a very long time. You have been processing enormous amounts of information, emotion, responsibility, and uncertainty, often simultaneously, often without adequate rest, often without anyone around you fully understanding the weight of what you are managing on the inside, while you maintain the appearance of functioning on the outside. And in all of that motion, something critical has been buried. Not lost, never lost, but buried beneath enough noise that you have started to wonder whether it is still there at all. It is still there. The frequency has not left you. Your assignment has not been revoked. The call on your life has not expired. But access to it requires something that the current pace of modern life does not reward and does not make easy. And that is the practice of genuine stillness, not passive stillness, not the stillness of exhaustion or avoidance, but the active, intentional, chosen stillness of someone who understands that the most important work sometimes happens not in the doing, but in the allowing. Think about what it means to tune a very precise instrument. You cannot tune it while it is being played. You cannot tune it in the middle of a performance. You have to stop. You have to create a moment of quiet. You have to listen for the tone that is already there and make adjustments until what the instrument produces matches what it was built to produce. You are that instrument, and the 7 minutes of silence is the tuning. Every day that you sit in that stillness, you are bringing yourself closer to the exact frequency you were created to carry. Every day you skip it, the gap widens slightly, the noise increases slightly, and the signal that has been trying to reach you has to work a little harder to get through. There is one more thing I want to say about this practice before we move forward. The 3 steps of the return protocol work best when they are done in sequence and without interruption. The grateful reversal softens the ground. It shifts your nervous system out of threat mode and into a posture of openness. The declaration of appointed time plants a seed in that softened ground, a specific, spoken intention that your brain and your body begin organizing around without your conscious effort. and the 7 minutes of silence waters that seed. It creates the internal conditions for what you have declared to begin taking root at a level deeper than thought. Done together, done consistently, done not as a performance but as an honest reaching toward the frequency you were built to carry. These 3 steps are not a self-help exercise. They are a coming home. They are the daily practice of a chosen one who is choosing, day by day, to stop abandoning themselves and to start returning. Returning to clarity, returning to purpose, returning to the specific, irreplaceable, astonishing frequency that was placed inside you before you had language to describe it. You do not need to have it all figured out to begin. You do not need to feel ready. You do not need to be in a quiet house or a peaceful season or a better version of your circumstances. You only need 7 minutes and a willingness to show up for yourself with the same faithfulness that something greater has been showing up for you, even in the seasons when you could not feel it, especially in those seasons. What I am about to share next is directly connected to what happens inside those 7 minutes. It will give you something more precise, more researched, and more immediately available than anything I have described so far. Something that was developed over decades of serious scientific inquiry, tested across thousands of people in circumstances not entirely unlike yours, and made available specifically for people who are ready to stop surviving at the surface and start operating from the depth they were always meant to occupy. The door to your own frequency is not locked. It never was. You simply needed someone to remind you where the handle is, and now that you know, the only question that remains is whether you are willing to reach for it. There is a reason the 7 minutes matter so specifically, and I want to build on that before I take you somewhere you may not have expected this conversation to go. Because what I am about to share is not a detour from everything we have been talking about. It is the scientific language spiritual reality for the spiritual reality you have been living inside for longer than you can remember. And when you hear it, I think something is going to click into place in a way that will make the rest of your journey feel less like a mystery and more like a map you have always been holding but never knew how to read. Chosen ones carry a specific frequency. That is not a metaphor. That is not spiritual language dressed up to sound important. That is a statement that researchers working in laboratories with equipment designed to measure the electrical activity of the human brain have been circling around for decades without always using that particular word. But the frequency is real, it is measurable, and it is different from the frequency that most people are operating on most of the time. Researchers studying the brains of people who operate in states of peak creative insight, deep intuitive knowing, and what some traditions call spiritual clarity, have identified specific brainwave patterns that correspond to these states. When a chosen one is fully aligned, fully connected to the assignment they were made for, fully living from the depth of who they actually are, rather than the performance of who the world expects them to be, their brain does not operate the way the average stressed and distracted modern brain operates. It operates at a frequency that neuroscientists call gamma, and gamma is not simply a faster brain. Gamma is a different kind of brain. It is associated with moments of breakthrough, with what researchers sometimes describe as eureka states, with the kind of thinking that produces solutions that seem to arrive from somewhere beyond the ordinary processing of the conscious mind. People in gamma states report feeling more connected, more clear, more purposeful, more themselves, not a better version of themselves, their actual selves. The version that has always been there underneath the noise. But gamma does not operate alone. It has a companion frequency, one that I mentioned briefly in the previous section, and that I want to go deeper on now, because it is the discount on which everything else is built. That companion frequency is called theta, operating between 4 and 8 hertz. Theta is the frequency of deep creative access. It is the frequency of learning that bypasses the critical, skeptical, protective filter of the conscious mind and goes directly into the deeper layers of understanding and knowing. Theta is the frequency that children operate in naturally and almost constantly. Watch a child who is genuinely absorbed in play, not distracted play, not screen play, but the deep imaginative play of a child who has forgotten that the world exists outside the story they are living inside, and you are watching a brain in theta. You are watching a brain that is learning at a rate and a depth that adult brains rarely achieve, because adult brains have been turned out of theta by decades of performance pressure and survival stress, and the relentless demand to be productive, to be on, to be ready. Chosen ones are designed to live in theta more than most people around them. That is part of what makes them feel so different. That sensitivity, that depth of feeling, that tendency to see things others do not see, to feel things others do not feel, to know things before there is logical evidence to support the knowing. That is not a malfunction of the chosen one's nervous system. That is the chosen one's nervous system working exactly as it was designed to work. The problem is not the sensitivity. The problem is that the world was not built to support it. And over years of trying to survive in environments that were not designed for the frequency you carry, you have gradually, painfully, lost access to your own depth. This is where Dr. James Rivers enters the conversation. And I want to be careful here to give you the full picture rather than a summary, because what this man discovered over more than 30 years of research deserves to be understood rather than simply cited. Dr. James Rivers is a neuroscientist whose work began with a question that sounds almost too simple to have taken decades to answer. The question was this: if the human brain is capable of operating at frequencies associated with extraordinary creativity, deep learning, and what some researchers cautiously call transcendent states of awareness, why do so few people access those states with any regularity? And what would happen if you could give them a reliable way to do so? That question led him through years of research, through collaborations with institutions including MIT, through studies that examined thousands of subjects across a wide range of ages and backgrounds, and eventually through a research partnership that included work connected to NASA, where the question of human cognitive performance under conditions of extreme stress and isolation is not an academic interest, but a very practical one. What Dr. Rivers discovered, after more than 3,000 days of accumulated research and testing, is that the brain does not naturally resist these elevated states. It is not designed to stay locked in beta, in the stressed and reactive and constantly performing mode that most modern adults inhabit. The brain wants to access theta. The brain wants to access gamma. These are not exotic states that require years of meditation practice or pharmaceutical assistance or unusual neurological gifts. These are states that the brain will naturally move toward given the right conditions and the right input. The problem is that most people never encounter those conditions because nobody ever told them what those conditions were. The discovery that changed everything in Dr. Rivers' research was the principle of brainwave entrainment. This is the mechanism by which the brain synchronizes its own electrical activity to an external frequency. It is not a new discovery. The basic principle has been observed and documented for well over a century. But what Dr. Rivers and his team did was to apply modern precision to this ancient observation using sophisticated audio engineering to create specific sound frequencies delivered through headphones that the brain responds to with remarkable consistency. When the right frequencies are introduced at the right intervals with the right precision, the brain does not resist them. It follows them. It entrains to them the way a tuning fork responds to another tuning fork struck at the same pitch. The resonance is not forced. It is invited, and the brain accepts the invitation naturally, reliably, and relatively quickly. The specific tools used in this process include what are called binaural beats, which are two slightly different frequencies delivered separately to each ear, creating a perceived third frequency inside the brain that corresponds to the target brainwave state. They also include isochronic tones, which are precisely timed pulses of sound that engage the brain's natural tendency to synchronize with rhythmic patterns. Together, when calibrated with the precision that Dr. Rivers' research has developed, these sound technologies can guide the brain into theta and gamma states in a fraction of the time that traditional meditation practice requires. And they can do it without requiring any special skill, any particular belief, any years of practice, or any prior experience with meditation or mindfulness of any kind. This is why 7 minutes is the number, not because 7 is a spiritually significant number, though it is, but because 7 minutes is the threshold at which the brain, given the right audio input, can genuinely complete the shift from beta to theta, not begin the shift, complete it. In 7 minutes of listening, with the right frequencies in your ears, your brain can arrive at the state that traditional meditators sometimes take years to access consistently. That is not an exaggeration. That is what the research shows, and that is what thousands of people who have used this tool have reported from their own experience. I want to tell you about a woman named Sarah. She came to this work in circumstances that I think will feel familiar to you. She had been in a season of waiting that had stretched past the point where hope felt rational. 2 years of trying to rebuild her career after a setback that was not entirely her fault, but that she had spent a long time blaming herself for. Nights where sleep would not come. Mornings where motivation had to be manufactured rather than felt. A sense that the version of herself she remembered, the one who moved through the world with energy and clarity and a sense of purpose, had somehow gotten lost in the fog of everything that had gone wrong. She started using the Genius Wave, which is the name of the audio program that Dr. Rivers developed from his decades of research. Not with enormous expectation, but with the quiet desperation of someone who had tried enough other things to have run out of reasons not to try one more. She listened for 7 minutes every morning for 3 weeks, and what she described after those 3 weeks was not a dramatic overnight transformation. It was something quieter and more real than that. She said that things started becoming clear in a way she had not experienced in years. Not that her problems disappeared, but that she could see them differently. She could see around them. She could see what her next step actually was, rather than simply feeling paralyzed by the distance between where she was and where she wanted to be. Within 2 months, she had taken 3 specific steps in her career that she had been frozen in front of for over a year. Not because her circumstances had changed, because her had access to a frequency that allowed her to see what had always been there. I also want to tell you about a man I will call Marcus. He was 53 years old, had spent his entire adult life being the person who held everything together for everyone around him, and had arrived at a place of such profound internal depletion that he described it as feeling like a phone that was always on but never charged. He was functional. He was showing up. But the light behind his eyes, the one his wife mentioned gently one evening over dinner, had dimmed in a way that scared him when he allowed himself to notice it. He started using the genius wave on the recommendation of someone in a community he was part of. Within the first week, he reported sleeping more deeply than he had in years. Within the second week, he noticed that his first thoughts in the morning had shifted. Instead of immediately cataloging everything that needed to be done and everything that could go wrong, there was a brief, quiet moment of something he could only describe as okayness, not euphoria, not manufactured positivity, just a genuine grounded sense that he was going to be all right. And from that small shift, everything else began to move. I know some of you are thinking that $39 is not nothing, and I want to acknowledge that before I say anything else about it, because that thought is valid and it deserves to be honored rather than dismissed. $39 represents something real for a lot of people who are in seasons of financial pressure, which is one of the most common features of the waiting season that chosen ones go through. Money that is spent carefully, because it has to be. And I am not going to pretend that the price does not matter or minimize the weight of that decision. What I will say is this: the Genius Wave is normally priced at $49. Through the link in the pinned comment below, it is available today for $39. It comes with a 90-day money-back guarantee that is not conditional or complicated. If you use it for any period of time within those 90 days and it does not do what I have described, you get your money back. Not a partial refund, not a store credit. Your money back. That guarantee exists because Dr. Rivers and the team behind this program are not interested in your $39 if the program does not work for you. They are interested in what happens when it does. One thing I want to be very clear about, because there are counterfeit versions of this product that have appeared in various places online. The only legitimate source for the Genius Wave is the link in the pinned comment below this video, not a search result, not a third-party website, not a version you find somewhere else at a different price. The link in the pinned comment is the only place where you are guaranteed to receive the genuine program with the full 90-day protection in place. Please do not purchase from any other source, because what you would receive would not be what I have described and would not carry the guarantee that makes this a risk-free decision. This offer at $39 is not permanent. The pricing is being held at this level for a limited window, and the number of people who can access it at this price is not unlimited. I do not say that to pressure you. I say it because I have watched people sit with the decision too long and come back to find that the window had closed, and I do not want that to happen to you. If something in this message has already begun to move in you, if the 7 minutes we talked about earlier already resonated with something real in your body, trust that resonance. The frequency knows its own. Before I take you into what I need to say next, I want to acknowledge something. What you just heard about the Genius Wave, about the science, about the frequency, about becomes possible when the brain is finally given the conditions it was designed to operate in. That information carries real hope. And hope, when it arrives after a long season of its absence, can feel almost disorienting. Like sunlight after too many days in a dim room. You blink. You are not sure whether to trust it. You are not sure whether you are allowed to want it. I understand that, and I am not going to rush past it to get to the next thing. Because what I need to say now requires you to be fully present, and fully present means feeling what is actually here, not just reaching ahead toward what is coming. What is here, right now? Underneath the hope and the resonance and the recognition of everything I have described so far is the weight of what the waiting has cost you. And I think it would be dishonest. Of me, it would be a kind of pastoral malpractice to speak only about what is coming without first sitting down beside you in the reality of what has already been. So that is what I am going to do right now. I am going to sit with you in it, not to keep you there, but to honor it before we move through it. The years of waiting have taken things from you, real things, not abstract things, not theoretical losses, specific, tangible, irreplaceable things that you have quietly mourned in the spaces where no one could see you doing it. And I want to name some of them, not because naming pain amplifies it, but because named pain can finally be laid down, while unnamed pain just keeps circling. The first thing the waiting took was relationships. Not all of them, but some of the ones that mattered most. There are connections that require a certain kind of presence to maintain, a presence that is available, unhurried, unburdened enough to show up fully for another person. And when you are in a long season of waiting, when you are carrying the weight of uncertainty and deferred hope and a future that keeps not arriving, that kind of presence becomes one of the first casualties. You showed up when you could, but you were not always fully there, and some people, not because they were unkind, but because they were human, drifted toward the warmth of people who were more present than you could afford to be. Some relationships that should have deepened stayed surface level. Some that should have survived did not, and you carry that. You carry the specific faces and the specific conversations that never happened and the specific moments of connection that slipped by while you were managing your own interior weather. That is a real loss. It deserves to be named as one. The second thing the waiting took was trajectory. There is a version of your career, your purpose, your public contribution to the world that by any reasonable estimate should be further along than it is right now. Not because you are lazy, not because you lack talent or intelligence or drive, but because long seasons of waiting tend to compress the energy that should be expanding outward, and compressed energy turned inward. Long enough becomes self-doubt. You stopped pitching the idea. You stopped raising your hand. You stopped believing that the door would open if you knocked again, because you had knocked enough times by then to have developed a Pavlovian relationship with closed doors. The career that should have gone further, the platform that should have grown, the impact that should have been wider by now. These are not small things to mourn. They represent years of your life, and they deserve honest acknowledgement. The third thing the waiting took was the freedom to dream out loud. Do you remember when you used to say the big thing without prefacing it with a disclaimer, without adding the qualifier that made it sound smaller and safer and less likely to expose you to the embarrassment of wanting something you might not get? There was a time when the vision came out of your mouth whole, unguarded, full of its original size and color. But a person can only share a dream and watch it met with silence or skepticism or well-meaning but diminishing responses so many times before they begin editing the dream, before it reaches their lips, before they hand people the small version, before they stop sharing it at all and begin keeping it in a room inside themselves that they visit less and less often because visiting hurts. That freedom, the freedom to dream out loud without armor, the waiting took that from you, and getting it back will require more than just the breakthrough arriving. It will require you to practice opening your mouth around the full size of what you carry, even before the evidence exists to justify it. The fourth thing, and perhaps the most tender one, is what the waiting took from your relationship with yourself. The trust. The belief that your instincts are reliable, that your sense of your own gifts is accurate rather than delusional, that the thing you have always felt called to is real, and not simply a consolation story you invented to make the gap between your life and your potential bearable. Long seasons of waiting, when they go long enough, begin to erode the foundation of self-knowing. You start to wonder whether the call was real, whether the sense of destiny was simply ego dressed up in spiritual language, whether everyone who achieved what you were aiming for simply worked harder, wanted it more, deserved it more. That erosion of self-trust is perhaps the quietest and most damaging thing the waiting produces, and I want to be very direct with you about it. Doubt is not accurate information about your gifts. It is the residue of a season that has gone long enough to feel like evidence when it is not. I want to tell you about someone whose story you may already know, though perhaps not in the way I am about to tell it. There was a man named Joseph, and before you hear the version of his story that ends in triumph, I need you to sit with the version that was lived in the middle. He was a young man who carried a knowing, a sense specific and persistent, and impossible to fully explain to the people around him, that he was made for something larger than his current circumstances. He said it out loud once, the full unguarded version of it, and the response from the people closest to him was not celebration. It was rejection so complete that it became physical. He was thrown into a pit. He was sold. He was taken to a foreign country where no one knew his name or his gift or the dream that had been placed inside him. He ended up in prison for something he did not do, and the years passed. Not weeks, years. Long enough that the dream that had once burned with such clarity could have been reasonably concluded to have been a delusion all along. But I want you to notice something about what the text does not say about Joseph during those years. It does not say he gave up the knowing. It does not say he renounced the dream. It does not say he concluded that he had been wrong about himself. What it says, in the quiet spaces between the dramatic plot points, is that wherever Joseph was placed, he functioned with an integrity and a capacity that kept getting noticed, not by the people who had the power to release him, not yet, but by the reality around him, which kept confirming, in small and unspectacular ways, that what he carried was real even when no one with authority was acknowledging it yet. I am not going to tell you the end of Joseph's story right now, because I do not think you need the end of the story right now. I think you need the middle. I think you need to know that someone who was genuinely chosen, genuinely called, genuinely carrying something real and irreplaceable, sat in circumstances that looked from every external angle like evidence of the opposite. That the pit was real, that the prison was real, that the years were real, and that none of it was the final verdict. The circumstances were not the conclusion. They were the corridor. Your circumstances right now are not the conclusion. They are the corridor. And I want to say one more thing before we move forward, because I think it is the thing that needs to be said most, and that gets said least in conversations like this one. You are allowed to grieve what the waiting has taken, without losing faith in what is coming. Those two things are not in contradiction. Grief and faith can occupy the same space. Grief is not the absence of trust. Grief is the honest acknowledgement of real loss. And when you allow yourself to grieve what has been taken honestly and specifically, without rushing to the silver lining, without spiritualizing the pain before you have actually felt it, something releases. Something that has been held tight in the body for a very long time. Held tight because you could not afford to feel it while you were still in the middle of managing everything, begins to soften. That softening is not weakness. That softening is the beginning of the next chapter, because you cannot fully step into what is coming while you are still carrying the unacknowledged weight of what has been. The grief is not the obstacle to the breakthrough. The grief, when it is finally allowed to move through you, rather than being stored in you, becomes the very thing that creates space for what is next. So right now, in this moment, before we go any further, I want to give you permission. Permission to acknowledge what the waiting took. Permission to name the relationships and the trajectory and the freedom and the self-trust that were lost in the years of this season. Permission to feel the weight of it without immediately needing to reframe it. Permission to sit in the honest, unvarnished, unglamorous reality of what it has cost you to wait this long. And then, when you are ready, when you have given that grief the dignity of being felt rather than managed, I am going to take you somewhere that I believe will change everything about how you see not just what is coming, but who you are right now in the middle of waiting for it. Because there is a language, older than any language you have probably encountered in conversations like this one, that gives a name to exactly where you are. And when you hear that name, something in you is going to recognize it the way you recognize a truth you always knew but never had words for. The corridor has a name. The waiting has a purpose that is more precise and more powerful than anything you have yet been told, and you are about to hear it. There is a language older than any framework modern culture has given you for understanding time, and I want to bring you into it gently, because what it says about where you are right now is going to reframe not just this season, but every season you have ever lived through. Before I give you that language, I want to do something that I told you I would do at the start of this section. I want to be transparent with you about how I chose what I am about to share, because the process of choosing matters as much as the content itself. The emotional core of everything we have been building toward in this message is this. You are a chosen one who has paid a real price in a real season of waiting, and you are standing at the threshold of something that requires you to understand your waiting differently before you can step through it. That is the center of gravity of this entire conversation. And when I looked at the full range of ancient concepts and sacred language available to name, that reality too rose to the surface with a clarity I could not ignore. The first is the concept of kairos, and the second is the Hebrew word kava. I chose these two specifically because together they do something that no single concept can do alone. Kairos reframes the nature of the time you are in, and kava reframes what you have been doing inside that time. Together they give you a completely new way to understand not just the waiting, but yourself as the one who has been waiting. Let me take you into each of them with the depth they deserve. In ancient Greek, there were two entirely different words for time, and the distinction between them is one of the most important things you will ever encounter in a conversation about seasons and calling and divine timing. The first word was chronos. Chronos is the time you already know. It is clock time, calendar time, the time that moves in one direction at a fixed and measurable rate, regardless of what is happening inside it. Chronos is the time that has been pressing on you during this season of waiting. It is the time that turns into days, that turn into months, that turn into years. The time that makes the waiting feel like losing, because in Chronos, the person who arrives first wins, and the person who arrives later has fallen behind. Chronos is the only framework most people have for understanding their lives, which is why most people feel perpetually behind, perpetually inadequate, perpetually racing against a clock that never pauses for them. But the ancient Greeks had a second word, kairos. And kairos is something entirely different. Kairos is not the quantity of time. It is the quality of a specific moment. It is the word used for a moment that is ripe, appointed, charged with significance. A moment in which something that could not have happened before becomes not just possible, but inevitable. Kairos is the moment when the archer releases the arrow, not because a certain number of seconds have passed, but because the precise conditions for a perfect shot have aligned. Kairos is the moment when a seed that has been developing underground in darkness and silence finally breaks the surface, not because it decided to, but because it is ready. In Kairos language, there is no such thing as late. There is only not yet and now, and the shift between those two states is not determined by the Chronos clock on your wall. It is determined by a precision that operates on a completely different scale. What this means for you is this: you have been measuring your life in Chronos. You have been looking at the calendar and calculating how many years have passed and comparing that number to where you thought you would be by now. And the comparison has been producing a verdict of delay, of falling behind, of losing ground that should have been gained. But your life is not operating in Chronos. Your life is operating in Kairos. And in Kairos, you are not late. You are not behind. You are approaching the moment of ripeness with a precision that the clock on your wall is simply not designed to measure. The waiting you have been living in is not Chronos time draining away. It is Kairos time filling up. Every day that has felt like another day of nothing happening has been a day of invisible preparation reaching completion. And Kairos, by its very nature, does not announce itself in advance. It arrives, and when it arrives, it is unmistakable. This is not a positioning of reward for effort. Want to be very clear about that, because I think this is one of the most common misunderstandings about divine timing. Kairos is not something you earn. It is not something you receive as payment for suffering through the waiting with sufficient grace, or sufficient faith, or sufficient patience. Kairos is an appointment. It was set before you arrived in this season. It was set, if you will allow me this language, before you arrived in this body in this generation. The waiting did not create Kairos moment. The Kairos moment was already there. The waiting was simply the corridor between where you were and where the appointment is being kept. Now I want to bring you to the second concept, because it speaks to something even more specific and more personal. In ancient Hebrew, there is a word that is most often translated into English as wait. It appears in texts that say things like, "Those who wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength." And for most of the people who encounter that phrase, the word wait calls up an image of sitting still, of passivity, of a person in a waiting room, flipping through a magazine, watching the clock, hoping their name gets called before too long. But that is not what the Hebrew word actually means. The Hebrew word is kava, and kava does not mean to sit and wait. Kava means to twist together, to braid, to take separate strands and wind them around each other until they become something stronger than any single strand could be alone. The image is not a person in a waiting room. The image is a rope maker at work. Think about what that means for the season you have been in. Every year that has felt like delay has been a year in which strands were being twisted together inside you. The strand of your gift, the strand of your wound, the strand of your compassion, forged in the fire of your own suffering. The strand of your resilience, developed not in comfortable seasons, but in the ones that required you to find out what you were made of. The strand of your understanding, the kind that can only come from having lived through something, rather than simply having studied it. These strands have not been sitting idle. They have been winding around each other, slowly, invisibly, in the seasons that looked from the outside like nothing was happening. And what is being produced is not a thinner, weaker version of what you started with. It is a rope, strong enough to hold weight that your earlier self could not have supported. resilient enough to bear the load of what you are about to be trusted with. You are not delayed. You are being assembled. And the assembly requires the time it requires, not because the one doing the assembling is slow or careless or indifferent to your pain, but because the rope that is being made from your strands is being made to specification, to a standard of strength that demands precision. And precision cannot be rushed without compromising the integrity of what is being built. Now I want to bring in a third layer of language because I think you need all three of these concepts working together to fully understand where you are. The ancient tradition also speaks of something called the wilderness season. And if you have been in a long period of isolation, of feeling cut off from your community, of feeling like you have been placed in a landscape that is unfamiliar and uncomfortable and impossible to navigate with your previous set of skills, I want you to hear this. The wilderness is not a punishment. It has never been a punishment for the ones who were sent there. The wilderness is a preparation ground. It is the place where the chosen one is separated from everything that is not essential, where the distractions fall away, where the noise of other people's expectations and other people's timelines and other people's definitions of success becomes quiet enough that the chosen one can finally hear the specific frequency of their own calling. Interference. Every great figure in the ancient stories who was given an extraordinary assignment was first given a wilderness, not a brief inconvenience, a real wilderness, extended, disorienting, long enough to feel permanent. The wilderness does not look like preparation from inside it. It looks like being lost. It looks like abandonment. It looks like evidence that the calling was not real, or that the one who called has changed their mind. But the wilderness is where the identity is forged that the assignment requires. You cannot carry a great calling from a small identity. And small identities are not expanded in comfortable seasons. They are expanded in wilderness ones. You may be in your wilderness right now, or you may be at the very edge of it, in the last days of it, which is often the hardest part because the last days of the wilderness look identical to the middle days from the inside. You cannot tell from within it when it is ending. You can only keep walking, keep the rope being twisted, keep trusting that Kairos has an appointment with your name on it, that the wilderness cannot cancel. And here is the thing I most need you to hear, in language as plain and direct as I know how to make it. What God has appointed, delay cannot cancel. The promise that was spoken over your life in the quietest, most private, most interior place of your knowing, the promise that has followed you through every chapter of disappointment and endurance, and barely held together, faith. That promise does not have an expiration date. It does not become less true as the years pass. It does not diminish in response to your doubt. It was not contingent on your performance, and it is not threatened by your struggle. It was appointed, and what is appointed is also protected. The very fact that you are still here, still listening, still carrying the thread of knowing through every season that tried to take it from you is itself evidence that the appointment stands. You are not in the wilderness because you failed. You are in the wilderness because you were chosen for something that requires the person the wilderness is making you into. The hourglass was not set against you. It was set for you. And the sand that has fallen through it has not been time wasted. It has been time transformed into the very substance of who you are becoming. A person of depth, a person of tested faith, a person whose compassion has roots because it grew through stone, a person who, when the Kairos moment arrives and the door finally opens, will not stumble through it uncertain of their footing. They will walk through it, knowing exactly who they are and exactly what they carry, because the wilderness made sure of it. You are not delayed. You are not forgotten. You are not behind. You are being assembled with a precision that only looks like waiting from the outside, from the inside of eternity. From the perspective of the one who holds the appointment, what is happening in your life right now is not a pause. It is a preparation reaching its completion, and the completion is closer than the length of the waiting has led you to believe. I want to stay close to you in this moment, because what I am about to describe is something that lives at the intersection of the ancient and the immediate, the spiritual and the deeply personal. We have been talking about kairos and kava and the wilderness, about the language that names where you have been and what has been happening inside the waiting. And now I want to bring that language forward into something more concrete, more specific, more about the actual texture of your life in the days and weeks that are coming, because I think you need more than a reframe. I think you need to know what to look for. I think you need someone to describe what the shift actually feels like from the inside, so that when it begins, you recognize it instead of missing it. Because here is something that chosen ones often do in the early stages of their breakthrough. They miss it, not because they are not paying attention, but because they have been conditioned by a long season of waiting to expect the breakthrough to arrive with a certain kind of drama. A certain kind of fanfare, a door that swings open with unmistakable force. But the beginning of the shift rarely announces itself that way. It begins quietly. It begins in the interior before it ever appears in the exterior. And if you do not know what to look for inside yourself, you will look only at your circumstances, and your circumstances in the early stages of the shift will not yet reflect what is already moving. So I want to describe 3 specific areas of your life where something is already beginning to move, even if you cannot see it yet from where you are standing. 3 areas where the shift is not coming. It is already underway. And I want to be specific about what that movement feels like, what you should not do in response to it, and what you can trust even when the evidence is still thin. The first area is your inner life. The most interior part of you, the part that exists underneath your thoughts and your emotions and your opinions and your performance. That part has been stirring in a way that is different from the stirring you have felt before. It is quieter than excitement and deeper than hope. It is more like a settling, a slow, gradual arrival of something that has been moving toward you for a long time, and is now close enough that you can feel the displacement of air before it arrives. You may have noticed it in the mornings, in those first few seconds before your mind begins its daily inventory of everything that needs to be managed. There is something in those seconds that feels different from what was there 6 months ago. A quality of aliveness that is not yet loud enough to name, but is present in a way that absence makes unmistakable by contrast. That is not wishful thinking. That is the kairos moment, approaching close enough for your spirit. Register it before your circumstances confirm it. What you should not do in response to this stirring is try to manufacture it into something bigger than it currently is. The temptation in the early stages of interior movement is to grasp at it, to try to accelerate it, to interpret every good morning as the arrival of the breakthrough, and then feel disproportionately crushed when the afternoon is ordinary. The stirring is not the breakthrough. It is the announcement of the breakthrough. Treat it the way you would treat the first light of dawn. You do not try to pull the sun over the horizon faster by reaching toward it. You simply acknowledge that dawn is real, that day is coming, and that your job in this moment is to be awake and ready rather than agitated and grasping. What you can trust in this first area is that the interior movement is not a coincidence, and it is not your imagination. Something genuine is shifting in the deepest layer of who you are. The rope is almost finished being twisted. The Kairos appointment is close enough that your spirit is already beginning to prepare for it, even before your mind has received confirmation. Trust the stirring. Do not amplify it artificially. Do not dismiss it as wishful thinking. Simply acknowledge it and let it do what it came to do. The second area where something is moving is your relationships. And this one may already be visible to you in ways that feel more confusing than clarifying. Because the relational shift that accompanies a chosen one's breakthrough does not always feel like gain in the early stages. Sometimes it feels like loss. Sometimes it feels like friction. Sometimes it feels like the people who have been most constant in your life are suddenly less available, or less resonant, or less able to hold the conversation that you most need to have. And that can feel like abandonment at a moment when you most need support. But I want to reframe that experience for you right now, because what you are experiencing is not abandonment, it is alignment. When a person's frequency begins to shift, the relational field around them reorganizes. People who were calibrated to the old frequency begin to drift, not because they are bad or wrong, or because the relationship was never real, but because frequency is not something you can fake in a close relationship. The people around you can feel when you are changing, even when they not name what they are feeling. Some will lean in, some will pull back, some will disappear with a suddenness that takes your breath away, and some will appear from directions you were not expecting, carrying exactly the kind of understanding and resonance that you have been hungry for without being able to name that hunger. What you should not do in this second area is try to hold on to the relationships that are naturally releasing by shrinking yourself back to the frequency that made them comfortable. The grief of losing a relationship that can no longer hold your current frequency is real. And I am not asking you to skip that grief. But please do not let that grief lead you to make yourself smaller in order to preserve something that the season has already outgrown. The people who are meant to walk into your next chapter cannot enter while you are still holding the door closed by trying to maintain a version of yourself that you are no longer actually inhabiting. What you can trust in this second area is that the relationships being released are making space for something. Space is not emptiness. Space is potential. And the specific ache of relational loneliness that chosen ones feel in the transition season is not evidence that they are fundamentally unlovable or permanently alone. It is evidence that they are between the old relational world and the new one, between the community that knew the version of them that existed before the wilderness and the community that will know the version that is emerging from it. The new people are coming. They are being assembled with the same precision that has been assembling you. And when they arrive, you will recognize each other in the way that people recognize each other when they have been shaped by similar fires. The third area where movement is already underway is the area of purpose and provision. And I want to be very specific here because I think this is the area where chosen ones most often make a critical error in the transition season. The error is this: they look at the external circumstances of their provision, their finances, their career, their opportunities, and they use those circumstances as the primary evidence for whether the breakthrough is real. And because external circumstances lag significantly behind interior and relational shifts, what they see is still the old picture, still the limitation, still the closed doors and the insufficient resources, and the gap between where they are and where they feel called to be. And they conclude from that lag that nothing is actually changing. But provision shifts last, Not because heaven is inefficient, but because provision in the kingdom does not flow toward potential. It flows toward prepared vessels. The financial shift, the career shift, the opportunity shift. The moment when the right door opens at the right time with the right people on the other side of it, that shift waits for the interior work to be complete. Because a large provision flowing into an unprepared vessel does not produce the fruit it was meant to produce. The timing of external provision is not arbitrary. It's related to the completion of the interior and relational work that has been happening in the previous seasons. What you should not do in this third area is make major decisions from desperation in the transitional gap between the interior shift and the external confirmation. The transitional gap is when chosen ones are most vulnerable to accepting the wrong opportunity, simply because it is available and the right one has not yet arrived. The wrong opportunity will always present itself before the right one, because the wrong opportunity is not calibrated to your specific frequency. It is a generic door. It opens for many people, and because it opens, and because you are tired of waiting, the temptation is to walk through it simply because it is open rather than because it is yours. What you can trust in this third area is that your provision is not late. It is sequenced. It is being held in reserve, not because you have not earned it, but because it is being aligned with the version of you that the wilderness has been producing. When you are ready, not in the sense of perfect, but in the sense of prepared, the provision will not trickle. It will flow with a specificity that makes clear it was assembled for you. Resources that match your assignment, opportunities that require exactly the gifts you have developed. People in positions of influence who recognize what you carry because they have been looking for it. The gap between now and then is not a punishment for insufficient faith. It is the final stretch of the corridor before the room opens. So here is what I want to ask you to hold today. As a practical act of faith rooted not in the denial of your current circumstances, but in the ancient language we have been building together, I want to ask you to choose one area, just one, from the three I have described, and make a decision to interpret your current experience of it through the lens of kairos rather than chronos, through the lens of movement rather than stagnation, through the lens of kava, of strands being twisted into something stronger rather than time simply draining away. You do not have to believe it perfectly. You only have to try it honestly. And if you are sitting with what I have just described and something in you is saying yes, something in you is recognizing the movement in one or more of these three areas, I want to invite you to type the words "I receive" into the comment section right now. Not as a performance, not as a declaration to anyone watching, but as an act of internal acknowledgement. A way of saying to yourself and to whatever holds your appointment that you are awake, you are paying attention, and you are choosing to receive what is already on its way to you. Like this video, if the ancient language has given you something new to stand on, share it with someone who is in their transition season and does not yet have words for what they are experiencing. And stay close to this community, because what comes next is going to require exactly the kind of person you are becoming. You are not almost there. You are already in the movement. The arrival is closer than it has ever been. Something has been shifting in you as you have listened to this message. And I want to acknowledge that before I say anything else. Not the shift that happens when you hear something inspiring and feel momentarily lifted before the feeling fades by the time you reach your car, or your kitchen, or your bed. A different kind of shift, the kind that happens in the deeper layers, the kind that does not announce itself loudly, but that changes something quietly and permanently in the way you hold. yourself from the inside. That shift is real, and what I want to do right now is give it a name, not a generic name. Your name, the specific name for the person you are becoming through everything you have walked through, everything you have endured, everything that has been twisted together inside you during the long season of your waiting. You are a cycle breaker. I want to explain what that means with the fullness it deserves, because it is not simply a motivational label. It is a description of a specific kind of person who carries a specific kind of assignment that most people around them cannot fully see or understand, and that the person themselves often cannot fully articulate, even though they feel the weight of it every single day. A cycle breaker is someone who was born into a lineage, a family, a community, a pattern of living and thinking and relating that had been running for generations before they arrived. Patterns of limitation, patterns of silence, patterns of dreams deferred and potential unrealized, and gifts buried under the weight of survival. And something in this person, from very early on, knew that the pattern was not inevitable, knew that the story did not have to continue the way it had been written, could feel, even without the language for it, that they were not simply a continuation of what came before, but a disruption of it. A deliberate, chosen, appointed disruption. The wilderness you have been in, the waiting season, the years of isolation and friction and doors that would not open, these were not obstacles to your assignment. They were part of it. Because a cycle breaker cannot break what they have not first deeply understood. You cannot interrupt a pattern that you have not first inhabited close to map from the inside. The years you spent close to the limitations, the years you spent feeling the full weight of what you were called to change, those years were not detours from your purpose. They were immersions in it. You were learning the pattern from the inside so that you would know exactly where to apply pressure when the time came. This is why your sensitivity has always been so acute. This is why you feel things so deeply, why the pain of the people around you lands in your body as if it were your own, why injustice makes you physically uncomfortable in a way that others seem to be able to distance themselves from more easily. You were not given hypersensitivity as a burden. You were given it as an instrument. A cycle breaker needs to feel the full texture of what they are breaking, needs to understand it from the inside, with a precision that only comes through proximity and feeling. Your sensitivity is not your weakness. It is the very tool through which your assignment operates. And here is the part that I want you to really sit with, because it is the part that changes everything about how you see the cost of this calling. The cycles you are breaking are not only behind you. They are not only in your family of origin or your community or the specific context you came from. The cycles you are breaking are also ahead. The children who will grow up in the space your breakthrough creates. The people in your community who will see you walk through the door and understand for the first time that the door was available to them as well. The generations that will inherit a different story because of what you chose to do with the season you are currently in. You are not just changing your own life. You are rewriting a story that runs both backward and forward in time. And the weight of that is real. And the honor of that is immeasurable. I want to take you now through a guided exercise because I think you need more than words right now. I think you need an experience. So I am going to ask you to do something that requires nothing from you except your willingness to be present for the next few minutes. Picture yourself standing at a threshold of, not a metaphorical threshold, a real one, a doorway. The kind with a frame on either side and a floor beneath your feet and light coming from somewhere beyond the opening. You are standing at the edge of it. Not quite inside what is on the other side, not still fully in what is behind you. You are exactly at the line. Now I want you to turn around slowly and look at what is behind you. Not with judgment, not with regret, with the eyes of someone who is looking at a landscape they have fully traversed. You have been through that terrain, all of it. Every season of waiting is visible from where you stand. Every closed door, every year that felt like loss, every night when the weight was almost more than you could carry, every morning when you showed up anyway. You can see all of it from where you are standing. Right now, stretched out behind you like a map of somewhere you will never have to live again in the same way. Look at how far you have walked. Look at the specific texture of the terrain you have crossed. Look at the places where the path narrowed almost to nothing and you found a way through anyway. Look at the places where you stopped and thought you could not go further, and then somehow you did. That is not nothing. That is not a story of delay and defeat. That is a story of a person being prepared with extraordinary thoroughness for something that requires every single mile of that preparation. Now turn back to face the threshold. Feel the light that is coming from beyond it. You do not have to see exactly what is on the other side to feel that it is different from what is behind you. It is lighter. It is more spacious. There is room in it for the full version of you, not the compressed version, not the version that learned to make itself smaller to survive the wilderness, but the actual, full, unedited, unguarded, unarmored version of who you are. That space was built to the exact dimensions of your truest self. And it has been waiting for you to arrive at this threshold so that you could step into it. You are already standing at this threshold, not almost at it, not approaching it from a distance, right at it. The work of the wilderness brought you here. The twisting together of all your strands brought you here. The Kairos appointment that was set before you had language to describe it brought you here. And what remains, the only thing that remains, is the step forward. You do not have to have everything figured out before you take that step. You do not have to feel completely ready. You do not have to have resolved every doubt or healed every wound or answered every question. You only have to be willing. Willing to step out of the identity that the wilderness imposed on you and into the identity that the wilderness was building in you. There is a difference between those two things, and you know it. The wilderness imposed the identity of someone waiting, of someone not yet, of someone on the outside of what they were created for. But the wilderness was building the identity of a cycle breaker, of someone with the depth and the resilience and the compassion and the tested faith to actually carry what they were given. And the person the wilderness built is not the same person who entered it. You are not the same. You have been assembled, and the assembly is complete enough to walk through the door. So now I want to speak a blessing over you. Not a formal blessing, not a religious performance. Just words that I mean, spoken from one person to another, across whatever distance exists between us. Spoken with the specific intention that they land in the part of you that most needs to receive them. May the weight you have been carrying be lifted from your shoulders at this threshold. And may you feel the physical reality of that lightness before this day is done. May the relationships that are coming toward you arrive with a recognition so clear that there is no confusion about whether they are yours. May the opportunities that are being assembled for you carry the specific signature of your gift so that you know without doubt they were made for you. May the voice of doubt that has been loudest in the long nights of your waiting grow quieter and quieter until it is replaced by the frequency of your own truest knowing. May the dreams you stopped saying out loud return to your lips with their original size and color restored. May the people who come after you The ones whose story will be different because of what you chose to do with your wilderness. May they one day know your name and bless it. And may you, in this exact moment, standing exactly where you are, with exactly what you have and exactly who you are, feel the specific, personal, irreplaceable love of the one who designed you for this assignment before you had language to describe it. You are a cycle breaker, and the cycle ends with you. And the new story begins here, at this threshold, in this moment, with this step. You have just stood at the threshold and looked back at everything you have crossed. You have received the name that belongs to the person you have been becoming through all of it. And now I want to do something that feels different from everything we have done so far in this conversation. I want to get practical, not because the spiritual dimension of what we have been building together is finished, but because chosen ones are not called to live permanently in the beautiful language of thresholds and frequencies and ancient concepts. They are called to act. They are called to move. And the most honest thing I can do for you right now, after everything we have shared together, is give you something concrete to carry into tomorrow morning. So I want to talk about 3 specific areas of your life that are preparing to shift. And I want to give you not just a description of what is coming, but an actual practice. Something you can do right now, something that costs you nothing but your willingness to engage with it, honestly. Because the breakthrough is not only something that happens to you, it is something you participate in. And your participation begins not when the circumstances change, but right now, in the current conditions of your actual life. The first area is your relationships. And I want to say about this one first, because I think it is the one that carries the most immediate emotional weight for most people in the season you are in. Here is what is preparing to shift. The relational landscape around you is reorganizing in ways that may already feel disorienting. People who were constant are becoming less present. Spaces that used to feel like community are beginning to feel hollow. And in that hollowing out, in that gradual clearing of what no longer fits the frequency you are now carrying, there can be a deep and specific loneliness that feels like loss, but is actually something else entirely. It is preparation. It is the relational field making room. What is coming in this area is not just new people, it is the right people. Chosen ones in their transition season often encounter what I would describe as frequency-matched relationships. Connections that feel immediately familiar in a way that has nothing to do with history and everything to do with resonance. You will meet someone in a context you were not expecting, and within a very short time, you will feel as though you have known them in a way that precedes the actual duration of the relationship. That experience is not coincidence. It is the alignment of 2 people who have been prepared for similar assignments, finding each other at the moment their seasons converge. The practical thing I want to give you for this area is simple. Beginning today, I want you to release the relational ledger you have been keeping. Not the people, the ledger. The internal accounting system that has been tracking who has shown up for you and who has not. Who has seen you and who has looked past you. Who has invested in your story and who has taken from it without reciprocating. That ledger is real and the entries in it are legitimate, but it is also heavy. And you cannot enter the relational season that is coming while you are still carrying the weight of the accounting from the season that is ending. So today, not as a performance of forgiveness, but as a practical act of self-liberation, I want you to close the ledger. Not tear out the pages, just close it. Set it down at the threshold we described in the previous section and walk away from it with your hands open. Open hands receive. Closed fists hold onto what was. and what is coming requires your hands to be open. The second area is your purpose, and this is where I want to say something that might surprise you, given everything we have discussed about the scale and significance of what you carry. The shift in purpose that is coming for you does not begin with a grand revelation. It does not begin with a moment of blinding clarity in which the full map of your assignment unfolds in front of you, and every question you have ever carried about your direction is answered simultaneously. That is not how Kairos works. Kairos is precise, but it is not theatrical. The shift in purpose begins with one step, one specific, small, immediately available step that has been sitting in your field of vision for longer than you realize, waiting for you to stop looking past it toward the bigger picture and actually bend down and pick it up. Here is the question I want you to sit with right now, and I want you to resist the urge to answer it with something large and impressive. I want you to answer it with the smallest honest answer you can find. The question is this: what is the one thing I already know I am supposed to do, that I have been waiting to feel more ready for before I do it? Not the 10 things, not the vision board full of things. The one thing. The thing that has been sitting in the back of your awareness with a quiet persistence that has outlasted every season of doubt. The thing that comes back no matter how many times you tell it that the timing is not right yet. That thing. That is your next step, not your whole assignment, just your next step. And the assignment always reveals itself one step at a time, never all at once, because the full map, given all at once, would be more than the current version of you could navigate without losing your way. The practical thing I want to give you for this area is what I call the one-step declaration. It is simpler than it sounds. I want you to take the one thing you just identified, the small and immediately available step that you have been waiting to feel more ready for, and I want you to write it down. Not type it. Write it with your hand on actual paper. Because there is something that happens in the physical act of handwriting that does not happen in typing. A connection between the thought and the body that makes the intention more real, more located, more committed. Write the one step. Then beneath it, write the date. Today's date. Not the date you plan to begin today. Because the act of writing today's date beside the step is the act of making it present tense rather than future tense. It moves the step from the category of intentions to the category of commitments. And commitments made by chosen ones in transition seasons carry a specific kind of weight that intentions do not. The third area is provision and opportunity, and I want to be very honest with you about this one, because I think it is the area where the gap between the interior shift and the exterior confirmation is most painfully felt. The money situation, the career situation, the practical, logistical, this is my actual life and bills are real situation. I am not going to spiritualize that away. I am not going to tell you that if you simply align your frequency, everything will resolve itself without any practical engagement on your part. That would be dishonest and it would not serve you. What I am going to tell you is both more grounded and more hopeful than that. Here is what is shifting in this area. The struggle for provision that has characterized your waiting season is rooted in something that is changing right now. It is rooted in the misalignment between what you have been offering the world and what the world most needs from you specifically. Chosen ones who are still finding their frequency often try to generate provision by offering what they think the market wants, what they have seen work for others, what seems practical and achievable given their current understanding of their own gifts. And the provision that comes from that kind of offering is always smaller and more labored than it should be, because it is not calibrated to the specific gift. when the frequency aligns. When you begin operating from the genuine depth of what you carry, rather than the edited, practical, market-tested version of it, the provision shifts. Not because you suddenly work harder, because you finally work right, from the right place, from the actual gift, rather than the performance of the. What is coming in this area is not struggle rebranded as a blessing. It is a genuine reorganization of how your gifts connect to the needs around you. Opportunities that feel like effort to pursue are usually not yours. When the right opportunity appears in your aligned season, the experience of it is different. There is a recognition quality to it, a sense that this fits in a way that the things you forced never quite did. You will not have to convince yourself that it is right. You will have to decide whether you are willing to receive it fully, which is a different kind of challenge, but a much more manageable one. The practical thing I want to give you for this third area is a releasing practice that I want you to do today. I want you to identify one way in which you have been trying to generate provision through striving rather than alignment. One area where you have been pushing against a door that has consistently resisted you. And I want you to make a decision, not a vow, not a permanent pronouncement, but a practical decision. To stop pushing that specific door for 30 days. Not to give up, not to declare it impossible. Simply to redirect the energy you have been spending on the resistant door and invest it instead in the one step you identified in the previous exercise. This is not passive, this is strategic. You are not giving up on provision. You are changing the method of accessing it. You are choosing alignment over effort. And in the economy of chosen ones, alignment generates what effort never could. Now I want to bring these three areas together into a single practice that holds all of them at once. Because the truth is that relationships and purpose and provision are not actually separate streams. They are one river. And when the frequency aligns in one area, the others begin to move in response. The person who shows up fully in their purpose begins to attract relationships calibrated to that purpose. The person who releases the wrong relationships creates space for the right ones. The person who takes the one available step in their purpose begins to encounter provision that was waiting for that step to be taken before it could flow toward them. The single practice that holds all three is what I want to call the morning return. It is the return protocol we discussed earlier, the 3 steps of the grateful reversal, the declaration of appointed time, and the 7 minutes of silence practiced specifically in the morning, before the noise of the day has a chance to drown out the signal, before the to-do list, before the phone, before the news, before the voices of everyone else's urgency crowd out the quiet frequency of your own knowing. 7 minutes of intentional return to yourself every morning is the foundation on which everything else in this season is built. It is the practice that keeps the alignment active. It is the daily act of saying to the deepest part of yourself that you have not forgotten who you are, even when the circumstances of the day will try very hard to make you forget. If you have been listening to this message, and something in you is saying yes, something in you is recognizing the 3 areas and the 1 step and the morning return as things that belong to the season you are actually in, I want to invite you to type the words "I'm ready" into the comments section right now. Not because you have everything figured out, not because the doubts are gone, but because ready is not the absence of doubt. Ready is the decision to move in spite of it, and you have been ready longer than you know. The threshold you have been standing at has been waiting for exactly this moment. The step forward belongs to you, and today is the day you take it. We have traveled a long way together in this conversation, and I do not use that word lightly. Travel. Because what has happened between the first word of this message and this moment right here has not been passive. You did not simply listen. You showed up. And showing up in the season you have been in, when everything in your circumstances has been giving you reasons to check out, to numb out, to scroll past anything that might require you to feel something real. Showing up is not a small thing. It is actually one of the bravest things a person can do. And I want to honor that before I say anything else. Thank you for being here. Not in the generic way that people thank audiences. In the specific way that I mean it when I say that your presence in this conversation, your willingness to let these words reach the parts of you that have been waiting to be reached, matters. Not just to me, to the larger story that you are a part of. Because chosen ones who show up for their own awakening are not only changing their own lives, they are changing the frequency of the space around them. And the world needs that frequency right now more than it has in a very long time. I want to tell you something that I believe with everything I have. Right now, as you are hearing these words, there are other chosen ones all across the world receiving this exact same message. Not the same words necessarily, but the same truth, the same recognition, the same quiet interior shift of something settling into place that has been unsettled for too long. In living rooms and in cars parked outside places they were not quite ready to go into yet. In kitchens at 2 in the morning and on park benches in cities you will never visit. In languages do not speak and in contexts I cannot imagine. People who carry the same frequency you carry are being found by the same truth that found you today. You are not sitting in this moment alone. You are part of a company of people who were chosen for this specific generation, for this specific moment in history, for the specific assignment of being the ones who break the cycles and restore the hope and carry the light into places where the darkness has been uncontested for too long. You are not alone in this room, and this room is bigger than you thought. I want to do one final thing with you before this message ends, because there is something you need to lay down before you walk out of this space and back into the ordinary, extraordinary reality of your life. Something you have been carrying that was never meant to travel any further with you than this moment. I want to guide you through one last exercise, and I want you to receive it not as a technique, but as an invitation. Picture yourself one more time at the threshold we described earlier. The doorway with the light coming from beyond it. You are standing at the edge of it, as you were before. But this time I want you to notice what you are holding in your hands. Not literally, but in the way that the interior landscape is always holding things that the physical hands are not. Look at what you are carrying. The specific weights of this season. The grief of the relationships that cost you more than they gave. The weariness of the years of waiting that went longer than you planned. The particular heaviness of the dreams you stopped saying out loud. The quiet ache of the self-trust that eroded over the long seeds of doors that would not open. The fear, and I want to name this one specifically, the fear that even now, even after everything you have heard today, even with the frequency stirring and the Kairos appointment close, that it will not be for you. That this message was for someone else. That you will return to your ordinary life tomorrow and nothing will have changed. I see that fear and I do not want to dismiss it because it is real and it belongs to a person who has hoped before and felt the specific weight of hope deferred. But I want to ask you to do something with it. I want to ask you to set it down right here at the threshold. Not to pretend it does not exist, not to declare it conquered or resolved, simply to make a decision that it will not travel with you into what is on the other side of this door, that it stays here at this specific moment. in this specific space, and that what crosses the threshold with you is not the fear, but the frequency. Not the doubt, but the knowing. Not the weight of the waiting season, but the strength that the waiting season built in you. Set it down, all of it. The grief and the weariness and the deferred dreams and the eroded self-trust and the fear. Set it at the threshold, like luggage you have been carrying through an airport for too many hours. Luggage that was never yours to carry in the first place. Luggage that was placed in your hands by seasons and circumstances that did not have the authority to define you, even though they tried. Set it down. Feel the specific physical sensation in your body of what it would feel like to not be carrying that weight anymore. Let that sensation be real. Let it arrive in your chest and your shoulders and the back of your neck and the place behind your sternum where you have been holding the tightest grip on all of it. Let it release. Not because the circumstances have changed yet, because you have decided that who you are is not determined by what you are carrying, and what you are choosing to carry from this moment forward is lighter and truer and calibrated to the frequency of the person you have always actually been underneath all the weight. Now I want to talk to you about this community and about what it means to stay connected to something that is doing the kind of work this message has been doing today. Because I do not believe that transformation happens in a single conversation and then sustains itself in isolation. I believe it requires ongoing nourishment. It requires the regular practice of being reminded of what is true about you when the ordinary Monday morning is trying very hard to make you forget. It requires community, not the community of people who only ever affirm you without challenging you, but the community of people who understand the language you have been hearing today, who know what kairos means and what kava means and what the wilderness is for, who recognize a cycle breaker when they see one and call out the gifts rather than the limitations. That is what this space is meant to be. And the way it grows, the way it reaches the next chosen one who is sitting somewhere right now without anyone to name what they are experiencing, is through the simple acts of connection that cost you nothing but a moment of your time. Like this video, not for me, not for an algorithm, but so that the signal travels further, so that the frequency finds the next person who needs it. Share it with someone who is in their waiting season and does not yet have language for it. Subscribe to this channel so that what comes next can reach you when it arrives. And if this work has genuinely done something in you today, if these words have shifted something that needed to be shifted, there is a way to support the continuation of it in the description below. Not because anything is required, but because chosen ones who have been resourced tend to resource others. And the work of making these messages continues to require the support of the people who understand why they matter. I also want to mention something one final time, gently, without pressure, because I believe it belongs in the same way that it belongs in this season of your life. The genius wave met some of you somewhere in the middle of this message. Not at the section where I described it directly, but in the section about the 7 minutes, in the section about the frequency. In the moment when something clicked between the spiritual language and the scientific language, and you understood, at a cellular level, that these two things are not in contradiction, but in conversation. If that happened for you, if there was a recognition moment somewhere in this message where something about the brain and the frequency and the 7 minutes landed with a specificity that felt personal, then I want you to know that the link in the pinned comment below is waiting for you. Not urgently, not with pressure, but with the quiet certainty that it was assembled for the person you are right now, at this threshold in this season. If it is a yes for you, it is there, and it will be there when you are ready. And now I want to close this message the way it deserves to be closed. Not with a summary, not with a list of action items, not with a motivational crescendo that leaves you feeling temporarily elevated before the feeling fades. I want to close it with something quieter, something that I hope you carry not in your mind but in your body, in the part of you that remembers things more reliably than thought does. You came into this message as a person who has been carrying a great deal for a long time. You are leaving it, if you have allowed these words to do what they came to do, as something slightly different, not completely changed. Change of the kind that actually lasts does not happen in a single sitting, but shifted, reoriented, holding the weight differently, even if you are still holding some of it, seeing the corridor you are in with slightly more light than you had before, knowing a little more clearly that the appointment has your name on it, that the rope being twisted inside you is almost complete, that the kairos moment is not in some distant future that you have to somehow survive the distance to. It is close. It is measurable in a way that the chronos clock on your wall is simply not designed to measure, but it is close. And you, by showing up for this message today, have moved toward it in a way that matters. You are a cycle breaker. You are a chosen one. You are not here by accident, and you have never been defined by your waiting season, even when the waiting season tried very hard to define you. You carry a frequency that the world needs and that heaven has been protecting through every chapter that tried to take it from you. And what is coming for you, in the three areas we described, in the relationships and the purpose and the provision, is not a consolation prize for a long wait. It is the specific, calibrated, frequency-matched life that was always yours. It was always yours. It was simply being held until you were fully ready to inhabit it without shrinking from the size of it. You are ready now, not because everything is resolved, because you have been assembled and the step forward is yours to take. Go take it.